Money ends up being symbolic for lots of deeper things, and it ends up that money is just the way that other issues kind of come out.
Welcome to The Lisa Show, where we take a good look at life. Years ago, shortly after I got engaged to my late husband, Christopher, he and I sat down to talk about finances. I asked him how he budgeted. He was confused by the question, which in hindsight gave me a lot of information. I clarified, how much do you save? What are your expenses? How do you keep track of your finances, etc.? And he showed me his checkbook and said, "Oh, I have the carbon paper on my checks, so when I write a check, I have a copy." I was confused. I said, "So do you add it up later and balance your checkbook every week, every month?" And he replied, "I never balance my checkbook. I just call the bank and ask for the total to see if I have money to write more checks that day." Naturally, I said, "So why make the copy?" And he kind of laughed at himself and said, "Oh, just to have it." We laughed. You know, it wasn't a serious conversation. I was like, "Christopher, that's not a system." And he fully admitted, "Yeah, I know, it's not great, but we're not dealing with large sums here." You know, true to form, I looked through the checkbook and it was mostly checks to Wendy's for a chicken club with cheese, no tomato, which at the time was less than $5. But still, it revealed a lot. It probably won't come as a surprise to anyone listening, but I was in charge of the finances from then on. I didn't have much money either, but I did balance my checkbook regularly, and I knew about savings, interest rates, and credit scores, so I handled all the money. But even though I may have been the person in the relationship with more financial literacy at the time, I've learned a lot since then, not just about handling money. I've made good decisions and several mistakes, but also about how to talk about money. That conversation with Chris was one of the first times in both of our lives that we had to figure out how to navigate finances as a group project, which is awkward and very vulnerable. Money brings up feelings like moral failure and triumph and all kinds of attitudes that we brought with us into adulthood, whether or not we're aware of it. Money is tender, pun absolutely intended. This is why I'm delighted to introduce you to Dr. LeBaron Black, professor of family finance. Not only does she have great advice for handling finances, no matter your stage of life, but she's also an expert in relationship dynamics around money. She's going to demystify those big emotions and give us some skills for starting the hard conversations about money, which, like most other difficult conversations, can yield great results and help you live an intentional life. Meet Dr. LeBaron Black.
I'm Dr. LeBaron Black. My students call me Dr. LB because it's easier and shorter.
Dr.
But
LB.
you can call me Ashley.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So when we say family finances, how is that different from personal finances?
A lot of people who study finance are in business school, but I study and care about how money plays a role in family relationships and development and well-being. So more of the focus on the people than the money, but money's the specific thing I'm looking at.
Now, I have to pause and tell you that I actually think Ashley is underselling herself here. Yes, we're going to start with the way money affects relationships and personal well-being. But she also has really solid financial advice. And it's all tied up together because you have to understand how those emotional dynamics already influence your money decisions before you can make different, more intentional choices.
There's this term called money scripts, kind of like a script in a play. They're basically the subconscious but deeply seated beliefs that people hold about money that kind of guide our whole orientation and values around money. And these are very much tied to childhood experiences and how your parents talked about and handled money. And these can be unhealthy or healthy. Some of the unhealthy ones that we've seen be linked with not being as financially healthy and being less relationally healthy. The biggest one is called money worship, but it's basically materialism. There's never enough money. Money's super important. That tends to be bad for relationships and for making good financial choices.
Yeah, I would think so.
So that's like one that, and all of these money scripts can be very subtly internalized as you see how your parents use money, as you hear your parents talk about money. Another money script is called money status, which the way I describe this is like the idea that self-worth equals net worth. And this is totally internalized by how people talk about like idolizing really wealthy people or talking about poor people as if they're less than, these kinds of things then do make money feel like very personal. Like, oh, like if I am a spender or something, this isn't just like an unfortunate thing for my financial well-being. Like this is a character flaw,
Right.
So
Yeah.
definitely our relationships impact our actions and attitudes and beliefs about money, and the other way around too. Money can be a big stressor on relationships and well-being. It's a common saying that money is the number one cause of divorce.
Is that true?
Different studies have slightly different orders, but it's in the top 5 pretty consistently.
Top 5.
So it's up there. Like money is a big deal in marriages and just in all personal relationships. I think a lot of it is because money ends up being symbolic for lots of deeper things. And it ends up that money is just the way that other issues kind of come out.
Yeah. There's always the conversation that you think you're having and then the one that you're really having.
Yes.
It just is what it is.
And I think you can tell when it's more than about money, when it gets really heated or there's like deeper things coming out here. We're not just talking about money anymore. A lot of my research is on couples and we look at couple conflict. For example, let's say a married couple and one of them is unhappy with a big purchase that the other one made. On the surface, they're fighting about money. You spent this much on this thing. And
we need to talk about these things and agree on them.
Yeah. And it seems like it's about the money and a financial issue. And maybe to some extent it is. Maybe they couldn't afford that and that is going to, affect their finances. But under the surface, maybe it's actually about respect, like the person feeling like they're not respected. You didn't even ask me before doing that, which makes me feel threatened, like I'm not actually an equal partner in this relationship because you don't respect me enough to stick to the budget we had talked about or enough to see how I feel about that first. So it becomes more of a respect and trust issue than it is about the actual dollars being spent.
Okay. A lot of times in couples, you kind of say, oh, well, there's always a spender and always a saver.
Yeah.
Do you find that that's true? Is that fair? How can you navigate conversations if that's the attitude?
That is a common occurrence because two spouses are going to be comparing to each other. Like, of course, two people are not ever hardly going to be exactly the same. So even if one of them is just a little bit more of a spender or a little bit more of a saver than the other, they see each other in contrast to the other person. So yeah, it's common for one person to feel like more of a saver, one to feel like more of a spender. And we do see that the number one predictor of financial conflict in couples is seeing your partner as a spender. And especially if the husband sees his wife as being a spender, if that's like how she's labeled in his mind, which is interesting to think like what kind of gender dynamics are going on there.
Say more about that if you could.
Yeah, the reason why I think it's even more so when it's a wife spender and husband saver is probably because husbands are more likely to think of, even if they are saying verbally that the money is ours, like we're a team, it's both of our money. At the end of the day, they might be more likely to actually feel like it's their money because most couples are dual earner, but it's more common if it's a single earner for it to be the husband making the money and the wife being a homemaker. And so it's so important when couples are making those decisions together about employment and homemaking, no matter the employment and caregiving situation they've made, to actually act like they're a team about it and to not secretly be like, yeah, this is actually my money though because I made it, Yeah.
Are there ways to combat that?
Yeah, and in defense of the saver in this situation, I think it is really frustrating to be married to someone who you don't feel like is supporting financial well-being in your family. So there's things that both partners in that situation need to do. The spender, it's important for them to be respectful. This is your shared money. It's not just your money. Like, you don't just get to spend it how you want. And so the spender matching more of the saver is, I think, respectful. And then for the saver, though, to realize that just because you don't value spending money on something doesn't mean they don't. So compromise, kind of meeting in the middle. And some like very easy take-home ways to make that happen are, we talk about fun money, or some people call it mad money. So having a line item in your budget for each partner to have whatever amount of money you decide, obviously the same for both partners, that they can spend on whatever they want, and they don't have to get permission from the other person. As long as it's legal and moral, they can spend it on whatever they want. And maybe the saver wants to save it. That's fine. But the spender can spend it, So having some, that can help, because it's hard to be in a relationship, to not just make decisions yourself. To make decisions with someone is obviously difficult. And so for people who feel like constrained or they've lost some freedom, like having some money that is just theirs to spend on what they want can really help reduce some of the arguments around, I don't like this that you spent, I don't like this. So that's an easy way, is fun money. And then second of all, just having a budget, I think, really helps, because if you make the budget together, which is a good idea, it's a way to be equal partners with finances. If you can make and agree to a budget together, and that might require some compromise, maybe, you would put this much towards this thing, I would put this much, let's meet in the middle, But then if you can agree to that together, then your behavior really then sticking to that budget and how you spend your money is a sign that you respect the decisions you've made together, and that you're then working together as a team towards financial goals you've set together, instead of feeling like you're in conflict with one another.
Yeah.
The thing I'll say that really helps avoid some unnecessary conflict in relationships is the HALT principle, which means don't spend money, especially big purchases, when you are hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And that's good for any decisions, actually, not just financial decisions.
That's such good advice.
It's such good advice for even if you're single, just that'll help you financially. Yes. Hungry, angry, lonely, and tired, our brains are just not making the best decisions in that state. Like, our brains are literally a different brain in any of those four states. And so don't make financial decisions when you're any of those things. And also don't have hard conversations when you are in that state. You want to be your best self when you're
That's just
making
good advice
decisions
all around.
Yeah.
HALT.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. You're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired.
Yeah. Oh, one other tip I remembered for couples.
Please.
So you have your budget, you have your fun money, but let's say like there's something that isn't fun money. It's not like a personal expense, and maybe it fits within the budget. One more thing is a spending limit, where partners decide on this together, what your spending limit in your relationship is, which just means that if either of you are going to spend more than that, you just have to check with the other person first. And that just gets rid of any unpleasant surprises, which are surprisingly common. Like the car commercials, I don't know if you remember, where they like surprise their spouse with a car.
The big bow on it.
What in the world? Like, maybe
Saturday
already
Night Live
knew
did
you were... Did they? Where the spouse was mad?
Where it was like, here, honey, here's your Christmas. And she's like, what? You bought a car without talking to me first?
Yes.
Like, we can't afford that. And he's like, I thought you'd be excited. I put a red bow on it. And she's like, this is a major expense.
Yeah.
Like, is it a lease? Is it are we renting? Like, what percentage? It was hilarious.
That is funny. And yes, it's funny because it's true. That is something you should talk about together. And maybe it's okay if you knew... Like you knew you wanted to buy a car. Like you had talked about some of the basics first, then, which car it is could be a fun surprise. But yes, having a spending limit where maybe it's for college students, it's frequently like $100, but maybe for some couples, it's like $500.
For most of my adult life, it's been $100.
Probably. Yeah. Like whatever
it's more
it
than
is,
$100.
Whatever it is that feels like a big deal, that's where the line should be, where you would just appreciate a check-in. Like, hey, I'm about to spend this. Is this cool with you? Like, yes. Or like, we need to talk about this first.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you have any other advice or maybe a story about how a couple who's maybe not on the same page financially with their budgets, how they might get on the same page.
Yes. Multiple studies have found that, couples who have more similar financial values to each other compared to spouses who have very different financial values or different beliefs about money, tends to be easier for them to talk about money well. they tend to be happier in their relationship. So like, obviously it would be easy if we were the same,
Yeah.
But it's not an uncommon thing for couples to feel very different about at least one big thing in life. And for some couples, it's money. Mm-hmm. For those couples, in one study, we found that forgiveness buffered that statistical association a lot, meaning that couples who with very dissimilar financial values struggled. Mm-hmm. But if those couples were high on forgiveness towards each other, their relationship didn't suffer very much.
Interesting.
So it's normal for some things to be hard, especially on things you feel very differently about. And whatever those are in a relationship, the more that you can bring in some of these soft skills of forgiveness and trying to put yourself in their shoes and see it from their perspective, and some of these like teamwork skills where it's very easy to see it as me against you, but instead, let's think of this as the issue as the problem, not you as the problem. And how can we together as a team come at this in a way that we're both happy with at the end of the day, that we can both get on board with. But all these things, forgiveness, addressing the problem instead of fighting each other, these are all hard to do in the moment when we're feeling strong emotions. And so again, halt if you're hungry, not the time to have this conversation. But also I think just takes a lot of work, honestly. Like the things that my husband and I like have a hard time talking through, it's just continual work over years of trying to become a better person. To have these kinds of conversations go better, to be more understanding of where they're coming from. Just a lot of like kindness and compassion for each other.
Okay, so just recapping here for a second. There are a lot of reasons why money can be a source of conflict in a relationship. Money is emotional because, like it or not, it symbolizes other things, like mutual respect and partnership in your relationship. And then we add to that emotion by telling ourselves stories about what money means or how our spouse is the spender and we're the saver. The next thing we know, money wedges itself between us and our spouses and starts to drive us apart. But there are things we can do to have a better relationship with our spouses when it comes to money. The big ones are offering forgiveness when our spouses don't always make the best financial decisions, deciding on common values for spending our money as a couple, setting spending amounts that require a mutual check-in, setting aside fun money for each spouse, and remembering that acronym HALT. A quick reminder to halt spending when we're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. So essentially 80% of my Amazon purchases. Just feeling a little vulnerable and called out right now. With that in mind, I asked Ashley for her most universal advice moving forward. What conversations should every family have? And what does practical budgeting look like in the age when carbon copy checkbooks have been replaced with plastic? Oh, and also you just can't call the bank anymore.
The first thing to do is get an emergency fund.
First
thing.
And no matter how much money you have or don't have.
Yeah.
Okay.
And ideally, we're talking 6 to 12 months of expenses, because if you have that, even if you lose your job or you have a really expensive car or home repair or an unforeseen huge expense, you're okay. You're covered. If you have 12 months of an emergency fund, you have a whole year to survive. And it's not 12 months of how much you usually spend, just the basic expenses.
Pay the bills, get by.
But even a 3-month emergency fund is awesome. Yeah. We would applaud that.
Where would you put that money? Are we talking about in your checking account, in a savings account, or
somewhere liquid enough that you could use it at a moment's notice if you needed it?
A moment's notice without like a penalty or a fee?
Yeah.
Okay.
For people who are living paycheck to paycheck, an emergency fund just saves you from any little expense causing you to go into debt or to be in crisis or something. It's just a smart buffer that saves you from stress and debt. And then once you have that, then things like getting out of debt, investing, saving for retirement, those kinds of things are the next step. And all of that would be helped by a great budget.
Talk to me a little bit about what a good budget looks like.
Creating one in the first place. Mm-hmm. That's not that hard to do. I think the harder part is long-term habits of tracking where your money's going, at least once or twice a month going through all your spending and expenses for the whole month.
That makes me uncomfortable.
I know, it's not fun. And that's why a lot of people don't do it.
Because then you see it black and white, right? Is that why we just avoid it? You're like, oh, how many times did I go to Chick-fil-A this month?
I think that people either are kind of embarrassed or not super proud.
That's just hypothetical, by the way, the Chick-fil-A thing. I would never.
Yeah, not you. Someone.
Yeah, somebody might do that.
In theory. Either that people don't actually love to see, the honest truth, and or it just takes time and work, and it'd be more fun to watch, say, Traders,
Yeah,
someone
hypothetically,
rather watch Traders.
Rather watch TV.
Yeah.
I like your point. People, relationships. Well, and I have to say, too, we all know that there's a lot of free budgeting apps or ways to track programs people want to sell you. I mean, there's a million different ways. Have you found one that's particularly just hits it out of the park for not a lot of time, not a lot of money?
I think it's important to find your own thing. Okay. I'm the wrong person to ask because I'm so old school. I just use Excel. I like just doing it all by hand. It helps me process it mentally. But I think
I kind of like that, though, because it seems accessible to anyone.
But it might save time to use, an app that will automatically categorize things for you. And so a lot of people do like apps.
But I like that we're talking about the big idea here, the principle behind it, and saying, you can find something that works for you.
Yes.
Have you found anything through teaching, through research, different ways that make it more habitual?
Yes, what makes the budgeting process complete is not only tracking, but then letting your budget guide your behavior instead of just always spending money on what we want when we want. If you do it twice a month, you're checking with your budget. If halfway through the month you can tell, oh, darn it, I'm already over what I wanted to spend on eating out. I need to not spend money on eating out the rest of this month. Tracking it makes you aware of that. And then actually doing it is hard. And I think that's why budgeting gets a bad rap. People see it as not as fun. They just want to be free with their money. I hear from a lot of people that I know I have enough. I'm not worried about spending more than I have. And so I'm not going to track it. And what we always tell students is that no matter how much money you have, paycheck to paycheck or super wealthy, a budget is always helpful for being intentional with your spending. We have an assignment in our family finance class at BYU where they do have to create an initial budget, track their actual spending for 2 months, and then at the end of the 2 months, revise their initial budget to be more realistic. They realize things they didn't know before, and revising your budget is awesome. In theory, you want to only spend this much, but you're not going to. You're going to spend more, so being honest with yourself and revising it to fit your needs is important. And through that process, we try to help them realize that they can actually do the things they really want more often when they have budgeted for it. Obviously, some line items in a budget will be housing and insurance and food. But if they really want to go on a trip to Hawaii, put that in your budget, save up for it, because the only other alternatives are either going into debt for it, which is not smart and will ruin the experience, or never going, which is sad if you care about it. So aligning your budget with your goals and then seeing those goals happen as you actually budget and match your behavior, your spending to your goals, helps people be oh, actually, this is a tool. This isn't chaining me up and taking my freedom away. It's actually giving me the freedom to do the things I want to in life.
That's inspiring. And that's intentional. Thanks. Yeah.
That's the goal. So for people who don't like budgeting, just give it long enough and do it in the right way that you can see how it's benefiting you and giving you the things you want in life more than if you weren't using it.
Well, there you go. That's the pitch for budgeting. No matter if you have a lot or a little, everyone needs the reality check of mindfully comparing your actual spending to what you thought and planned for. Set up your emergency fund and adopt budgeting as a tool to give you more freedom for what you really want. There was one more little tidbit of neuroscience that Ashley shared with me that I want you to hear. Something fascinating that the brain does or doesn't do related to financial decisions. And it has to do with long-term saving, like for retirement.
They've done MRI scans or some kind of fancy brain scan. This is not my own research.
Love it.
But they have found that we think of our future selves. I'm far out from retirement. So if I'm trying to picture myself at 65 or 70, our brains think of our future selves the same way we think of somebody else. Our brains don't think of that person as me.
Really?
And this was specifically in terms of financial choices. That's part of why it's so much easier to focus on what I want now, because it's really hard for us to really see our future retirement age self as ourselves. Like we have to really intentionally try to make that very personal and to be like, okay, let me picture this. Like, let me try to make this a realistic scenario where I'm 65, that feels so foreign to most of us.
And I want to retire.
Yes. But I can't because I went to Chick-fil-A too much or whatever. I just kidding. Me too. I love Chick-fil-A.
I know.
So anyway, so it's
so delicious.
It is.
Not sponsored yet. I'm going to fast forward through the rest of our conversation about Chick-fil-A, although I stand by that being a very important topic, and I do have a lot to say about it. My coworkers know that I am a diet lemonade evangelist. Anyway, if you related at all to having a hard time thinking about your future needs as a reason enough to sacrifice current wants, or if you're worried that it's too late to start preparing for retirement, Ashley has some good news.
One of the most important phrases in family finance, compound interest, is known as the eighth wonder of the world because it is interest accruing interest on itself. Our brains are good at thinking linearly, and compound interest is not. It is exponential growth, which our brains literally can't really process. Everyone underestimates compound interest. That's just how our brains work. But if you can know how to do time value of money calculations, you can see if I put in just this small amount, the time element becomes way more important than the actual money in. And retirement savings, it feels more foreign the farther away it is. It feels less like you're doing it for yourself personally, but you will help your future self out so much.
Just to underline what Ashley said about compound interest, here's a little scenario to chew on. If I had put $1,000 into a typical high-interest savings account when I was 20 years old and simply left it alone, it would multiply itself by about 32 times by the time I turned 70. That $1,000 would be a cool $32,000, and I wouldn't have had to do anything other than leave it alone. That's the magic of compound interest. Unfortunately, I didn't do that when I was 20. I was too busy blowing my money on concert t-shirts and Snapple. But the point is, it's never too late to start. I'm so grateful for Dr. Ashley LeBaron Black for her advice today on so many money matters. Healthy brains love to assign all kinds of meaning and nonsensical rules to the way we spend or save. And there are good reasons it's so challenging to put future needs ahead of current wants. Your brain literally relates to your future self as being a different person. Meanwhile, managing your finances with another person is a genuine challenge. Fortunately for all of us who would eat Chick-fil-A for every meal if left unchecked, the classic financial advice holds up. Build an emergency fund and find whatever budgeting exercise works for you. It can be a spreadsheet, an app, or any system that lets you review your transactions a few times a month so that you can be mindful about what you have and what you spend. Christopher and I tried a lot of different budgeting techniques. We started off with carbon copy checks and probably less than $100 in the checking account. And we were able to, through a series of very vulnerable and sometimes very uncomfortable conversations, learn how to talk about money without making it personal. Some of the things that we ended up landing on was giving each other the benefit of the doubt and honoring the way that we wanted to spend money in each other and making compromises. And honestly, we would write down all of our expenses on a piece of paper. And then we would look for things that we wanted to save for that shared our mutual values, like family vacations or working on fixing up our house or paying for something that the kids really needed. And when we were able to come together like that, it just worked out. We never had a lot of money, especially after having 5 children, but we made a way for it to shift around and work. I look back on that now because now I make all the decisions by myself. And those principles that we started out with are still true. Now I just have accountability to myself, which is great, but also kind of dangerous. Anyway, Christopher and I may have started with a carbon copy checkbook system, but we landed on a place of mutual respect, partnership, and compassion in our financial relationship. All things that paid big dividends far beyond the checking account.
The Lisa Show is a production of BYU Radio, hosted by Lisa Valentine Clark. This episode was produced by Becca Hurley-Lung with help from Erica Price and Blake Morse, with post-production by Gracie Davis. A special thanks to today's guest, Dr. Ashley LeBaron Black. Dr. LeBaron Black is an assistant professor of family life at Brigham Young University. Don't miss out on 2 other amazing podcasts from the Lisa Show family, The Council of Moms and Proofread, a new book review podcast to help you read more of what you love. You can find the Council of Moms and Proofread on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. As always, thanks for your messages. We read them all, and thanks for listening.
Are you ready to immerse yourself in the awe-inspiring world of nature? Listen to Constant Wonder, another great show from the BYU Radio family of podcasts. Join host Marcus Smith in riveting conversations with individuals whose lives have been touched by the Earth's beauty and mysteries. Uncover captivating stories that shed light on our planet's wonders, from history to science and beyond. If you crave enriching experiences and deeper connections with the world around you, tune into Constant Wonder. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.